Hi and welcome. I'm Martha Lane Fox and I am President of the British Chambers of Commerce and Chancellor of the Open University, which I might be biased, I think are the two best jobs in the world. Welcome to our podcast, and I'm thrilled to have Carla with me, who is going to talk about the skills shortages and some interesting insights that her business, Wealthbrite, has around both financial skills, but also how that leads into wellbeing and mental health. So welcome, Carla. Lovely to have you here. Can you just tell us a bit about what Wealthbrite does? Because I'm not sure everyone will be familiar.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Martha. Great to be here. So for those listening, I'm Carla Hoppe. I'm the founder and CEO of Wealthbrite. At Wealthbrite, we provide financial skills training in the workplace, particularly for early careers talent. And we're really on a mission to change the way we teach finance at work. This is about empowering people with the financial acumen so that they can be more commercially aware and better prepared to make financial decisions in their own lives.
To unpack that a bit for our listeners, what is financial education in your opinion, and why did you personally feel that particular gap? Tell us your story.
Yeah, well, look, I was a first generation professional entering the world of work sort of almost 15 years ago now. So
You started when you were 5.
you're too kind. And actually, as someone with a mixed cultural heritage who didn't always live in the United Kingdom, I actually found that whilst my family background had provided me with so much in terms of thinking about entering the world of work, when it came to understanding the lay of the land with financial benefits and how to adult with money, that was something that was lacking. And sadly, I wasn't provided that type of education in my schooling either. And the sad reality is we wind forward 15 years and actually very little has changed, right? We know, and there's plenty of data out there to support this, particularly with the London Institute of Banking and Finance. They have an annual Young Money Index, or a Young Person's Money Index, I should say. And they look very closely at what young people are saying about the type of financial education they're getting at schools. And consistently, they say it's kind of lacking, right? I think only about 8% of young people at school identify the school as a place where they get their financial education. And that means there are millions of young people entering the world of work every year who really don't have a strong grasp on the basics of money management. And that might be in the personal context, but it's also about understanding the wider context. So appreciating how the economy works, how business operates, and therefore what their role is in that as well.
I think that's such an important insight. You know, I think back to my education. I was an ancient and modern historian, as much as I was ever any good at history. And, you know, the world of business was completely unknown to me, really. And so in my first job, I was lucky. I was in a startup consulting company, and they spent a lot of time training and teaching me about how to look at a business, what cash flow was, how to think about building models around businesses. And I really feel lucky that I had that investment in me, but that's very rare, I think.
I think that's absolutely right. I think it's fantastic that you got that, and I think we need more of that. A couple of data points for you. The Institute for Student Employers does a sort of annual survey looking at student development, and actually they identified last year that the area where graduates and apprentices were most underperforming as against expectations was on this point about appreciating the wider context. So commercial awareness, political and economic awareness. So I think there is a real gap, and we know that in Wealthbrite that actually, people talk a lot in businesses about commerciality being a core competency, and yet very few people actually teach it. So I've been talking to a lot of businesses over the last number of months about this topic. And of all the businesses I've approached, when I challenge them on this to sort of say, is commerciality something you look for? Absolutely. Absolutely. We need people to be commercial. I said, do you teach it? No, I suppose we don't. I suppose it's sort of expected to be learned on the job. And I've only come across one business so far that has actually said, yes,
Well,
they do.
now we have to hear about that business. If you can reveal your sources, please.
I can, and I'm delighted to say it's a Northern Irish group.
I feel that possibly a bit of bias coming here.
Flying the flag. Yeah, so it's a great organisation called Kanos, and they've been in the business of running apprenticeships for a long time, over 11 years.
So a commercial apprenticeship.
Absolutely. So software and they do a lot around looking at helping young people succeed in work as they enter. And actually, what they've done as an organization is consider the training package that is offered to apprentices and compared it to what's offered to a graduate, for example. And I know from the Kainos team that they do actually offer a session, which is, what does Kainos do? How do we actually make money? What is our product? What is our services? Who are our customers? And that's fantastic because it means straight off the bat, you're accelerating somebody's commerciality in your organization. And actually, the thing I love about the Kainos training program, which is quite unique, I think, is it's sort of like a good 12-week program for their apprentices, which is a huge upfront investment.
Yes.
We're here talking today about skills and training and
Yes.
what companies can be doing. And I think, I think there's sometimes, I guess, maybe an attitude that says, well, it's quite costly to do this. But what Kainos kind of experienced and developed over time was that actually it wasn't enough to give, for example, school leavers coming into their workforce the same type of training or onboarding experience that maybe those who are a wee bit older were getting. And actually, even though when they did that cost benefit analysis, they said, yes, it's an upfront cost for us to take people out of the business for a significant amount of time, but that like classroom-based environment where they're given a sort of deep dive into the great and the good of what it means to work at somewhere like Kainos actually meant that when they went back into the workplace and they kind of joined their various business units, they were able to run at pace much, much faster than they would have otherwise.
Yes, that's a really good example. So it's a software business that has decided that they're going to really create a mini university, kind of internal university.
Absolutely, yeah, a little academy, really.
And have they seen can they point to the kind of financial return on that? Is that something they track? How does that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know from talking to the team there that they've got, I think it was 70% retention on their apprentices, which is fantastic. And I think it really speaks to, and I think the other point they noted, it really speaks to the ability for young people to progress in work when they're given this upfront training. So yeah, I think, embedding some of these financial acumen skills, this commerciality at an earlier date can really realize results much quicker for businesses.
One of the things that really came out, or really stuck out for me in the Business Barometer that the OU has been running, as you know, is that 72%, that's a huge number of organisations, say that the fact that they have a skills shortage in their business has increased the workload on their employees, and that therefore those employees are more stressed and more, all of the things that come out of a workload that feels kind of a bit unmanageable. And then, as you said, when you're layering on top of that some of the macroeconomic factors we've been facing, so both at home you might be feeling really under pressure financially, and then you're looking at your work and you're also financially under pressure. Have you seen that play out, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, well, look, I think if COVID and our experiences in lockdown taught us anything, it's the fact that, whatever it is we're experiencing in our home environments shows up in the workplace.
Yes.
You know.
And often they're exactly the same place now, right?
Absolutely. There's this sort of idea that you've got a work version of yourself and a home version of yourself. It's nonsense. You were just you. And yeah, the reality is actually, the cost of living is much more expensive than it has been. It's great to see inflation coming down, but actually financial stress remains one of the most significant drivers of mental health issues in the UK.
Which makes total sense, doesn't it? Of course.
It does. Yeah. And like the CBI has done an assessment on this and found that actually the cost of poor financial literacy in the UK is costing businesses £20 billion annually.
So just again, unpick that a little bit. I know we've talked a bit about what that is, what financial literacy means, understanding at the most basic level, cash in and out, what inflation's doing, both the kind of macro and the microeconomic, but what, just link it a bit more closely to therefore what happens to the men, how does it link back up to them?
Absolutely. So if you think about this is people who are struggling to make ends meet. So 88% of people in the UK today say they report that the cost of living has increased for them. Unsurprising given everything going on. We know people are struggling to save. 11 million people in the UK have less than £1,000 in savings. And how that manifests itself in the workplace is a combination of things. So at Wealthbrite, we regularly survey employees of our clients to ask them this question. And the most common responses we get back is stress, anxiety, lack of motivation, sleepless nights. So, and I mean, I think, you only need to hear that combination of quite toxic feelings and experiences. And you very quickly realize that, well, if that's going on in your life, and if you're constantly thinking about the pressures of making ends meet, or the extremely high levels of childcare costs, or whatever it is that you're personally experiencing right now, I mean, of course it makes sense that when you show up to work, you're a bit distracted.
Yes.
You're either you're maybe not quite as motivated in the workplace, or at its most extreme level, it translates into a level of anxiety and stress that means you're taking absence from the workplace because of the impact to your mental health. And that number that the CBI unlocked in terms of that £20 billion annual cost to businesses, that was as a result of absences and low productivity showing up in the workforce.
Yeah, and that's a really dramatic number, isn't it? And I know there was some research that came out just even a couple of weeks ago about long-term sickness in this country, and I was so kind of appalled at how many people are on long-term sick, which is, obviously bad for the economy, but just on a personal level, it must be so unpleasant to be either unable to get back into work, or wrestling with the mental health issues that come with that, or feeling as though you are just in chronic pain, or whatever the thing might be. It's really rich pickings if we can help people unlock that problem, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. There's no doubt about this. I'm painting a picture that is quite sort of shocking, could feel quite hopeless or despairing. But actually, I would challenge people listening to think about this as a £20 billion opportunity.
Yes, 100%.
Right? Because when you help people unlock, building skills, building confidence, and building knowledge around finances, what you're able to do is not just help them on an individual level, maybe like kind of, figure out how to make their money go further month to month, but actually you're embedding within them a sense of loyalty to your organization and an appreciation that an employer is going above and beyond, right? Again, another data point for you. PwC has an annual financial wellbeing survey that they conduct. Last year, they looked at, kind of what was happening with this kind of churn in the system, employees looking to jump or make moves and leave their current employer, and the reasons for that, right? And money is often a motivator. People are looking over the road. When we're thinking grass is greener on the other side. And it was interesting that 75% of those that said they were looking to move said they would be more attracted to an employer that cared about their financial well-being.
That's very interesting. So why do you, you can sort of imagine why that might be, but do you think that's in people's minds linked predominantly to just salary concern? What just talk a bit more why you think that.
So I think there's a few things going on here. So absolutely, a lot of people will be thinking about salary. We know wage inflation has been quite high. We know employers are feeling wage demand quite heavily on their shoulders. But actually, when you dig in, and again, I've been involved in a number of programs working with different businesses and industries, looking at what it is that like next gen particularly are looking for from a workplace. People really want more than just a paycheck nowadays, right? They're looking to their place of work for the sorts of things they would expect from a life. And that shouldn't come as a surprise to any business leader. If you only take into account the sheer number of hours we spend at work, is it surprising that we're looking for it to be a place that gives us something more than just the opportunity to earn something to take home at the end of the month? No, it shouldn't be, right? And I think, when you boil down some of these feelings or I guess what people's aspirations are from their place of work, it's the opportunity to get in and get on, right? In life and in work.
Yes.
And that means offering people skills, training and opportunities in the workplace. Well, we also know Randstad's Work Monitor report assesses what the voice of talent is saying right now. And 72% of talent say that learning and development is crucial for the future of their jobs, right? So I kind of think for business leaders, we're looking at two sides of the same coin.
100%.
Businesses say there's a skills shortages, But actually, both sides are saying the same
Yes,
things.
they are.
Both sides are saying, one saying there's a gap, there's a shortage, and the other is saying, I want this, I need
Yes,
this.
yes.
And it's just about finding a way through to then say, okay, well, what can we
Yeah.
do and how do we deliver it?
Yes, I completely agree. And I think, I've been talking in a previous podcast about how sometimes it can feel like this is something that is being done to businesses, that why aren't you just doing this? When actually, if you have any empathy, as I know you do, with being in a small business or even a big business, it's hard. It's not easy being a business leader. You are facing constant surprises just in the natural course of things, because that's what it's like running a business. But then you've got the macroeconomic factors we've all faced, from a pandemic to wars to inflation. It's been a tough ride. So
Yeah.
it's something I think we should have empathy with people about why some of these things aren't happening. And I don't run it, but I started a small business. It's a small karaoke business, and I really
know it very well.
Okay, good. Not a plug for voice. And I look at the team and how stretched they are, just keeping going, finding people to man the bars and so on. And I was then to say, and everybody's now got to do an academy. We do learn on the job and all that stuff, but I recognize how challenging it is. How do you help clients navigate some of those tensions around priorities?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you can't avoid the fact that in the current economic environment, businesses are under budgetary pressures. But I think my encouragement to business leaders would be that you don't have to go all in. This doesn't have to be a huge, costly exercise to get real bang for your buck, right? If you think about, and let me give some examples of the way we work with clients at Wealthbrite. So we often support groups of young people as they transition into the workforce. Why do we focus on young people? Well, as people enter the workforce, they're really in a learning mindset. There's an opportunity there as a business to really harness that environment and kind of build upon maybe an existing onboarding program or some sort of induction that you're already offering people to do, I guess, a couple of things, right? One is to go back to that great example I gave of explaining how your business actually works in practice. And that I shout out to my own organization. Of course, we can help you with that, but actually, you are best placed to explain your business to your people. There's a real opportunity there just to take some time to map out what your business model is, what your product or service is, and who are your clients and customers. And the value of doing that shouldn't be underestimated. A short conversation can really help consolidate in a young person's mind. Okay, I get it.
This is where I fit
This is
in.
where I fit in. And I now understand the bigger picture and my role in that equation, that commercial equation. And then I think the other opportunity you have as a business leader at that moment in time, particularly, is an opportunity to kind of help people understand your workplace pay and financial benefits. So we know that a lot of young people struggle to kind of really fully appreciate the value of what they're being offered financially in the workplace.
And who can blame them when the benefit schemes are always so complicated, and pensions, and should I take health insurance? Well, all the different things you might be on offer. It's complicated.
Correct. And actually, for many businesses, what they often do, and again, this is just kind of natural practice in the workplace, is you land in role, and very quickly in the first couple of weeks, you'll be asked to choose your benefits and make choices. You're being asked to make financial decisions for yourself without really having much by way of financial acumen to help you determine the choices that you're making. Is it better to take cash instead of those extra holidays you might get? Or, you might be offered the basic level of pension contribution by your employer, but you might have a choice to top up and your employer matches your additional contributions. Without really providing financial education, it's quite hard for young people to make that kind of choice, particularly when they won't necessarily be thinking about, should I be planning now for my retirement, which might be sort of 30, 40 years down the line, right?
More like 100 nowadays. I'm sorry to tell this a really young listener.
Yeah, well, yes, that's a conversation for another day. But I suppose what I want to share with people here is that actually, by taking these moments in time where people are already like eager to learn and providing them with some support, you have an opportunity to embed within them not just critical understanding about your business, but actually really embedding some skills that are going to have lasting impact in their personal lives.
Yes, I think that's a really good point, and I would love to just talk to you before we close about the difference perhaps in age groups that you've seen?
Yeah.
Because I think there is a narrative, isn't there, that young people, well, they just want a different set of things and they're kind of not quite lazy, but just have a ridiculous expectation of what work might be. And that perhaps one of the side effects of the pandemic has been, I want this flexibility, I want to work at home, I want these things, I want to be on TikTok, whatever the negative narrative might be, And maybe some of those things may or may not be right, but what I see is a group of young people who are actually concerned about the planet, concerned about the world, concerned about the macro climate, likely to have multiple jobs, likely to be really intent on doing purposeful things in their work. What have you seen, and how does this play into the conversations that you're having?
Yeah, well, one of the big things we've learned at Wealthbrite in speaking to a lot of young people is there's certainly a relatability gap in the workplace.
Yeah, that's really an important insight.
So I think there is a feeling, and we've actually spent a lot of time working, particularly within the legal industry.
Okay.
And part of the rationale for kind of starting looking at an industry like law was to challenge the preconceptions that certain professional industries may suffer less from the epidemic of poor well-being as a result of financial pressures. And what we found from talking to lawyers of all grades was actually lawyers, regardless of age and regardless of income level, are struggling or suffering from financial stress. And actually, the 2 points in the system where we saw most stress was at the beginning of their careers and towards the end of their careers. Oh. So actually, between the two ages where people often feel like there's least relatability, they're actually sort of having the same thoughts or having the same questions, maybe for very different reasons, but actually they're kind of actually having some similarities of experience. And part of what we do at Wealthbrite is to help bring those two sides closer together.
Can you give an example of where that's worked well with a client? Or
Yeah, well, actually, for some clients, what that has meant is actually we have gone and delivered training around reframing the conversation on money in the workforce, thinking about what does financial transparency mean to their business. And what we've done is we've done sessions for across the whole spectrum of their organization. So that might have been from new joiners, early careers talent. We've looked at partners in law firms. We've spoken to all of the support staff and people who sometimes don't always get the limelight.
No, I'm really interested in that as a cohort of people that are underappreciated in businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sort of like sing the praises of Simmons and Simmons, who we've done some work with, who particularly wanted to ensure that the full spectrum of their employee base was provided with an opportunity to kind of challenge their way of thinking when it came to financial well-being. So that's a great example. I think for others, though, it's also about creating environments where their whole group or their whole cohort can come together and learn from each other. So we've seen some really exciting conversations happening within workplaces where actually within a single setting, you've got everyone from the CEO right down. And actually what's really powerful is when you get into a stage where we're, the way we deliver training isn't so much sort of presentation, here you are, classroom-based learning, traditional classroom-based learning. It's actually really about storytelling.
Of course, that's the best way of learning, isn't it?
It's about sharing experiences. And what's really magical is when you get business leaders sharing their stories too. Because all of a sudden, what it does is it signals to those at the more senior levels in an organization that it's okay to talk about this.
Yes.
But it also tells young people, oh, they too have been in my shoes, or they've had similar thoughts to me. And that's incredibly powerful for organizations. And particularly when you think about the emphasis that rightly, I thought a lot of businesses have right now on improving social mobility in their organizations.
And making sure access is wider to more people.
Yeah.
I think, Carla, I didn't imagine we'd be using the word magical in this podcast, but I'm very happy you did. And I think what you've described, a couple of key things I'm going to take away. Firstly, really to think about it, not just from the side of the business leader, but what the employee is feeling too. And, I like your optimism that people do want to learn, and they want to learn at those moments of transition, and they want to be better equipped, because it does help with the stress, and it can really help on an individual employee level. That's one thing. But then secondarily, just everyone wins if we think about this cleverly, right? It's great for the business, it's great for the macroeconomy, clearly, and it's great for the individual. So I like you've made me feel more optimistic actually than perhaps you thought you would. So thank you, Carla. It's been great to have a conversation, and we wish you very good success with Wealthbrite. I'm Martha Lane Fox. That's the end of our podcast. Thank you very much for listening.